Hi guys, welcome back to History with Heath, and today we're going to be talking about the Golden Horde, which is my part 2 to my series about the Mongols, with my first one being about the Ilkhanate, which was the Mongol state that existed in the Middle East. And I'd say probably out of all of the Khanates that came out of the Mongol Empire, they lasted the least amount of time compared to the other Khanates, like the Golden Horde, which we're going to talk about today, which didn't last for the longest, but lasted for longer than the Ilkhanate. They kind of failed extremely badly. Anyway, so they were a vast and powerful state that emerged in the 13th century, and they covered territories that spread from around Russia, Ukraine, and Kazakhstan. They were founded by Batu Khan, who was a grandson of Genghis Khan, and they were a dominant force in Eastern Europe and Central Asia. Anyway, of course, their first leader was Batu Khan, who reigned from 1242 to 1255 and established the Horde. And he was also known as Ulus Jochi and did expand much of its territories, and he conquered lots of Eastern Europe. Then there was Berke Khan, who ruled from 1257 to 1266, not 50, was the first Muslim Khan and opposed Hulagu of the Ilkhanate, as you probably have known if you watched my part 1 series about the Ilkhanate. And this did mark a big shift in how they had relations with the other Mongol successor states, especially with this being a rivalry, of course, between two successors to the legacy of the great Genghis Khan. Anyway, he was succeeded by Monget Temur, who ruled from 1266 to 1280, and he strengthened the Horde and maintained ties with the Yuan dynasty and solidified it as a proper power. Then he was succeeded by Ozbek Khan, who ruled until 1241, who made Islam the state religion, and this was kind of like the peak time. So, the culture and religion of the Golden Horde. They were initially Buddhist, especially Mongolian Buddhist, as I said before, which is a combination of Tibetan Buddhism, shamanism, and Tengrism. Tengrism is the shamanistic religion of the Mongols and many of the people in that area, like the Tuvans, and it still exists today. And a key thing to note is that you might think, oh, why did you say shamanism and Tengrism? Are they the same thing? Well, not really, no, because Tengrism and shamanism are a bit different in that the shamanism is more local and about local spirits, and that probably varies between countries. Like there's the Mongolian shamanism and the Tuvan shamanism. And also, when I say Mongolian shamanism, this gets even more complex. But there's two types of Mongolian shamanism. There's the shamanism I'm talking about, which is just like local practices. And then there's Mongolian shamanism, as in the Mongolian form of Tengrism. So just like to clarify, I'm not talking about the Mongolian form of Tengrism. I'm talking about as in the local things around. Just kind of like how in Tuva, they would combine their Tibetan Buddhism with Tengrism, and the Tuvan, specifically the Tuvan form of Tengrism, as well as their own shamanistic practices. Anyway, so eventually after they were Buddhist, of course, and then they would adopt Islam under Ozbek Khan, as we mentioned before, and this was, of course, a very big prominent shift, and this impacted the Horde and strengthened their ties with Central Asia and the Middle East. But similar to Ilkhanate in their early days, they did actually have lots of tolerance for the Russian Orthodox Church and allowed them to not have to pay the jizya tax, which is the Muslim tax that's been used by many Muslim states, especially the caliphates, to tax non-Muslim people, especially people who are known as the people of the book, which is a belief in Islam of people who are kind of like, in their view, as people who are on the right track but kind of went off a bit. And the people of the book include the Jews, the Christians, the Sabaeans, and the Zoroastrians. And that sounds all correct because Judaism, Christianity, and Sabaeanism are all Abrahamic. And before you ask, Sabaeanism slipped from Second Temple Judaism, I'm pretty sure. And I might make a video of them in the far-flung future, but not right now. Anyway, and you might think, oh, but what about Zoroastrianism? Well, they believe that Zoroastrian Zoroastrianism is a people of the book, not because they're Abrahamic, but they think that, well, they're monotheistic, so they might as well go in there because they're kind of similar to Islam. And I'm going to make a video on Zoroastrianism after this video about the Golden Horde. Also, just to let you know, this video is coming out straight after the one about Nestorianism, but I've actually made these separate by day. It's just I haven't uploaded the other one yet. Anyway, they were administrated in a complex administrative entity with big organised taxation system, and they had a strong military and lots of trade routes like around the Silk Road, even though this was in the later days. They would eventually decline around in the Great Troubles from 1359 to 1381, which was just a large period of civil wars and instability. And then, of course, Timur, with the Timurid Empire, invaded, which did add a blow to their southern side. Eventually, the rise of Moscow and the Russian Empire and the Crimean Khanate led to the fragmentation of the empire. But this didn't mean that exact end. They had rump forms. Like there was the Great Horde, which lasted from the 1430s to 1502, which is the remnant of the Golden Horde, and was eventually destroyed by the Crimean Khanate. Then there was the Crimean Khanate themselves, which sort of saw themselves as the heir to the Golden Horde, and they kind of split off. But they're kind of like the Ottomans in that they didn't actually succeed the Byzantines, but they basically said they did because of right of conquest. And then also there was the Kazan Khanate, which I believe lasted the longest, which was just another small successor state, and I think that was the last one. Also, just to note, there was the Astrakhan Khanate and the Siberian Khanate, which are also other small rumps, but I think the Kazan Khanate, don't quote me on this, but I think the Kazan Khanate was the one that lasted the longest. Anyway, that's all from my sources that I can see right now, but I will just say a few messages before we end, but they'll be a bit longer than the usual ones. Anyway, yeah, so my next video, well, I've already said, but this video will literally be out a few seconds after my one about Nestorian Christianity, Assyrian Church of the East. And then my next video, which I'm going to make tomorrow, but tomorrow for you guys who are listening to this means Thursday. But for me it's Wednesday, but it'll actually be on Thursday. Anyway, after that I'm going to make a video on Zoroastrianism, and then I might make a video about the Chagatai Khanate or the Yuan dynasty, but I'll probably do about the Chagatai Khanate because everybody kind of knows about the Yuan dynasty, the Yuan Khanate. They're probably the most prominent. Anyway, that's all from me, guys. I'll catch you on the next one. This is History from Heath, signing off. Bye-bye.